Ani Gavino. Boom. Hello, mabuhay. My name is or Anito Gavino, and I am an embodied scholar, movement maker, mother, facilitator, community organizer. So, to answer the question, what drives you and what makes this practice essential for you and your communities? What drives me to make dances is a deep commitment to the craft and to social justice and a desire to leave a meaningful imprint on the world. Growing up with the wisdom of my lolo, my grandfather, I have always believed in the importance of not just existing but truly living. This means, as my lolo said, to make meaning of our lives. Thus, my meaning and my purpose, I believe, is creating spaces for community dialogue through what I know best, which is dance and storytelling. Making work is vital to me as the work contains our ancestral stories and our current struggles of fear and disconnection. Written histories have often facilitated colonization, such as that of the work of chroniclers during the so-called Age of Exploration. Thus, I'm motivated to create works as a way to preserve our evolving histories and to reclaim. As an immigrant single mother who navigates the life of an artist, the works I make are containers of stories. They are container and contemporary expressions of what I consider as folk dance. Through dance, I am able to educate communities on immigration policies and educate my audience on how to stay vigilant. La Migra Let's Run is an essential work in my choreographic practice as it still is an evolving work since 2014. This work urged me to research immigration history of this country from the Naturalization Act, Asian Exclusion Act, Patriot Act, and the recent SB4, which criminalizes undocumented border crossings. I share the history of how the U.S. government took lands from indigenous people by sharing these stories to the community I'm working with, to the cast members, sharing documentaries and readings. Sharing such histories with my community offers the necessary information to keep everyone aware and not be blinded to the idea of land of the free. This work also led me to inquire about our interconnection as immigrants of color and how we can find healing through collectivism. I help ground people in knowledge as a path to liberation and healing, and to understand the past in order to better understand the future. I like to share a proverb from the Philippines that says, "Ang hindi marunong lumingon sa pinanggalingan ay hindi makakarating sa paroroonan," or Sankofa. I am driven to make work not just to educate, but to provide tools for healing. We, as Filipino Americans in immigrant communities, go through unprocessed intergenerational traumas. Living incognito, we are taught not to attract attention and to keep the status quo. Thus, I continue to create spaces where the community can process, feel seen, and document their own stories, such as through the journal and poem writing activities that I offer after a show, that these writings are documented and monumented on our walls. A testimony on how I weave social justice with healing, aiming for communities to process anger and deep sadness through deep reflections, embodiment, and collective joy, is by Athena Turek, a dancer with Ani Malaya Works and a therapist, who said, Ani kept audience members and participating artists within their window of tolerance by weaving more painful stories with stories of love, community, joy, and humor. One of the things that I teach my daughter and my community is to find your voice. Not to be a biased mom, but you can see this in my child Malaya, whom I raised to learn, to teach, whom I taught Philippine dances and also encourage her to learn Afro-diasporic dances. Through her modalities, such as poetry and film, she has continued this search, her own search for this ancestral culture and our interconnection with other cultures. I also encourage dancers to find their nuanced voices, to seek connection to home, but not to mythicize home. I have taken dancers to the Philippines, especially those of Filipino descent but have never been to the Philippines, so that they can understand the complexity of colonialism still embedded in the country and bear witness to indigenous cultures that we aim to preserve and not commodify. To sustain the societal change centered on cultural preservation, education, collective healing, and liberation, I actively engage with my community through workshops, performances, and discussions encouraging participation and reflection, as mentioned earlier. I share knowledge through various platforms, such as my performances, through social media, through community radio, and creating a dialogue within the essays that I put in my website. I actively engage with cultural bearers from my island, Panay, to continue my practice. I maintain a relationship every time I go back to the Philippines or through Facebook Messenger and consult them about my practice, checking in and offering support when it's possible, like economically possible. With my work in the US, I continue to develop relationships with community partners and collaborators, seeking growth even after the show has ended. I collaborate with other cultural bearers who can appropriately represent their cultures, such as my work with Marcel Santiago Marcelino, a bomba culture bearer in our work Premix, which weaves stories of Philippines and Puerto Rico. My Babaylan Shaman inquiries in the upcoming works are intertwining with my collaborator Carlos Castaneda, who is of Mexican descent, and his investigations of his Guerrero roots. Our Pandango sa Ilaw dances resembles Oaxaca's La Bruja dances, which I just recently found out from him. Thus, I am driven to research and find threads of stories that weave humanity together. Through a cross-cultural analysis of these intertwined influences and historical trajectories, I aim to deepen our comprehension of humanity. Maraming salamat.